The Shield Knight is one of the most versatile classes in Blue Protocol's Dark Resonance, capable of holding the line, protecting allies, and still putting up serious damage if you build it right. In this video, we're diving deep into a complete Shield Knight build that focuses heavily on HP scaling and defensive synergies, turning what most people think is just a tank into an absolute hybrid powerhouse. What's up guys, my name is Fervor, welcome back to the channel, and today we're breaking down the gear, the stats, the skill setups, and everything that make the class not only just durable, but deadly. Whether you're just trying to solo tough content or anchor your party in the high tier encounters, this setup will give you everything you need to stay alive and hit back just as hard as the enemies. Just make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We're still trying to hit our first 10,000 here on the channel, and if you are interested in staying up to date on all things Blue Protocol Dark Resonance and anime games, make sure you are subscribed. And with that said, let's dive into the video. Before we dive into how this build works, I wanted to give a huge shout out to Blue Protocol Dark Resonance for sponsoring this video. If you haven't had the opportunity to jump in, I'll have a link down in the description so you can actually jump in and try Blue Protocol Dark Resonance for the first time for free. The game is an absolute blast and I'm having a great time, and I'll highly recommend you at least give it a try. And with that, let's talk about the class a little bit more. Alright, before we dive into how to build this specific build, let's go a little bit in depth on how this build plays and just generally how the Shield Knight functions. How this build differs from maybe other specs or this specific spec, how I'm building this, is with the intent of dealing really solid AoE damage and maintaining all your defensive buffs. The great thing about the Shield Knight is he is very defensive and his skills actually complement his offensiveness extremely well. So there's the capabilities of actually doing really solid damage while also being very defensive if you use the right skills and you use them at the right time. How we're taking advantage of damage is a combination of Vanguard Strike, Zeal's Crusade, and Judgment. Basically, Zeal's Crusade is going to make it so that your Vanguard Strike becomes Vanguard Hunt, and this is going to give you an increased amount of photon energy while also giving you a pretty solid amount of light barrier. You're going to consume your light barrier to prolong the effect of Zeal's Crusade as long as possible, and then as you're building up photon energy, you're going to spam as much Judgment to reduce the cooldown of Zeal's Crusade to continue to do the rotation of keeping your Vanguard Strike into the Vanguard Hunt mode. And this is kind of why I said that this class is very defensive, because when you're using Vanguard Strike, when it transforms into Vanguard Hunt, you're also going to be building up a lot of haste while also giving yourself a ton of light barrier. Light barrier is your main defensive tool. You're trying to keep your light barrier up as much as possible. Enemies will be punching you at all times, and if you're using skills that give you light barrier, you're going to usually stay alive and not have any problems. And then we may use something like Aegis Sword to help us when it's those really deep moments where things are going to be like tank busters or a ton of damage. But for the most part, just using your Vanguard Strike with Vanguard Hunt active is going to give you a lot of defensiveness, and that's the name of the game when you're playing the Shield Knight. Of course, we're going to go over the rotation in just a moment of how you would do it, just so you can have a visual representation of it. But let's break down the skills and talk about it a little bit more in depth. So coming over here to the skill tree, we have the Blade of Justice. This is your standard attack. We're going to upgrade this one as much as possible, but depending on how many books you have, is not going to be the most important. Next is going to be Vanguard Strike here. And as I said a second ago, this is going to consume a Holy Sigil, and this is going to give us Light Force Barrier, and this is going to increase our max HP. It's also going to give us another passive that's going to give us some insane amount of haste, and that's a synergy we really need to talk about in just a moment. But haste is going to give us a ton of cooldown. Now I know you're saying, Fervor, haste just gives us cast speed and attack speed, and that's completely true, but there are some passives in his skill tree that makes it so that the haste gives you more cooldowns on some of your skills, but we'll get to that in just a moment. We're going to put a high priority on Vanguard Strike since it's going to be our primary defensive and offensive skill, which is absolutely insane. By the way, Shield Knight is really good with that, so that's what we're maximizing. We also have Radiant Infusion. This is going to be one of our other things that's going to help us stay alive. Radiant Infusion is also going to help us with our Holy Shield for a bit as well, but for the most part, we're going to be using this when we need those defensive moments. For our Judgment is going to be our main spender skill. We're primarily using the Judgment to not only top us up and keep a lot of the healing pressure off of our healers so that they can focus on the other classes, but also it's going to give us a lot of AoE damage, which is actually really good because we want to deal as much damage as possible. The other skill we're going to be picking up is Sacred Blade. Sacred Blade is going to be a really great way to deal damage. It's also going to put debuffs on enemies, it's going to taunt enemies, and it's going to give us a lot of Light Forge Barrier. Does a lot of great things. Next, we're going to be using Zeal's Crusade. Zeal's Crusade is another one of those skills that's going to do a lot for us. It's going to consume Light Forge Barrier, it's going to give us Light Forge Barrier, it's going to deal AoE damage, and it's going to give us a heal over time, and this is our primary way of going into the Vanguard Hunt state. Because of this skill, this is a very high priority skill and something you should put a lot of effort into. Finally, we're going to be using Aegis Ward. Aegis Ward is just going to be your button that you press when you're about to die. It's going to make it so you don't die. It's going to make it so that you mitigate a massive portion of damage. I see a lot of tanks not using the skill, and if you're having defensive problems, it's mainly because of this and you're not maintaining your Light Forge effectively. But nonetheless, Aegis Ward is a really big one, so make sure you have it. So let's quickly go over our stats as well as our gear so you can have a better idea of what to go for with your setup. So we have 33,766 HP, 15% crit, 15% haste, 15% mastery. Our haste will go up to almost 50% when we do our build correctly and, you know, take advantage of our proper passives. The haste is our lifeblood. This is our major way of giving us cooldown. I know haste doesn't give cooldown, but I'll show you exactly why it gives us cooldown. Give us attack speed and cast speed, but yeah, we'll go into that in just a second. For our armor, we have, let's see, we have 4,323, and then we have 80% resistance. I have no clue what these number values actually mean. I'm just gonna tell you, try to have 4,000 armor, you probably be fine. I really wish I knew what these stat values mean in terms of damage reduction. We don't have that information though. For ability score, we're about 8,079. Haven't done my dailies for today, but we'll see how that goes. And let's go over the weapons. So for our sword and board, we're gonna have crit haste. Main stat haste is super important for this build, and then we roll another haste on this, so this is a perfect piece in my opinion. For our helmet, we have a mastery haste, which is completely fine. We rolled crit on this. Really solid piece overall, though we have main stat haste. The max HP is kind of not great because 100 is actually not that big in my opinion. That should be a lot more. I think this should be 1,000 if I'm being honest. But for the most part, this is our helmet. For our chest, we have resistances, which is actually really solid. We have a main stat crit with mastery, and then we rolled haste, so really good synergies there. For our gloves, kind of the similar thing, mastery crit. We probably should roll this to haste. We may do that, but this is what we're rocking with more resistance. For our boots, this is one of our bad pieces. Mastery versatility crit. We want main stat haste if we can. For our earrings, we have a main stat luck, unfortunately, with double haste. Attack speed, solid for the most part, but could be replaced. For our necklace, we have a main stat crit, which is fine with melee damage, which is actually pretty decent. Double mastery, again, we may roll that to haste. For our ring, we have haste, mastery, haste, really good with attack speed, so solid there. We have a really bad left bracelet with double haste, which is fine, but we got a main stat versatility. And then for our band, on the right side, we have a mastery, versatility, luck, just a horrible piece all around. And then we have this one, which is really solid, main stat haste, secondary stat crit with a luck roll. We're gonna roll this today. We just got more tokens for stone, reforged stone, so this one is a solid piece. Our main thing obviously is going to be main stat haste, so try to get main stat haste, maybe secondary stat crit and or mastery, and that's how you should build the shield knight in my opinion. For our images, we're going to be using the Muku warrior, and we're going to be using the goblin guard. Now the Muku warrior, what it does is it's going to have the ability to give you crit as well as crit damage. This is a damage focused tank setup, like a frontline. Yeah, it's basically like a frontlining DPS to some degree, basically. But it's going to give you increased crit, and then most importantly, whenever you deal a crit, it's going to trigger an AoE blast that deals damage every 5 seconds, saying that we have about 20% crit. We should get it right off cooldown, but just to show an example of this, whenever I crit, it will eventually do that pop. As you see there, I got 507 damage in an AoE, and this is an example of the extra bit of damage that we're going to get because of the nature of that. It's really helpful with damage is AoE, and again, depending on if you crit, it's going to help. And then of course this guy is going to give us more crit, does some really good damage, and as you see, we was like 15%, now we have 22% with some more crit damage. So it's like a really nice way to get some extra damage out of this build, because you will be doing a lot of damage over time. The other one we're going to be using is the goblin guard. And this is gonna basically taunt is gonna give you a rock barrier for each sand crystal, and it's just gonna keep you alive. It's basically another like way to keep you alive. If you have a problem, just activate it and you generally shouldn't die at all. You should be completely fine. Going over our talents, we're gonna do a combination of showing off the rotation and talk about the talents. We're gonna highlight the main ones that's super important first though. In the first tree, the things you really need to take a look at is Haste Sigil. Each 1% of haste increases the recovery speed of haste Holy Sigil by 1%. And this is part of the reason why I was saying that this is haste is going to be our cooldown, because haste directly ties to cooldown of our Holy Sigils. You can't use your you need the Holy Sigils to be able to use this, right? You can't use the skill. As you can see, that I can't do it anymore because I don't have any more Holy Sigils. So, and this is why cooldown is super important for this build, or haste is super important because it actually contributes to cooldown. Coming over to our second tree, let's talk about the important ones that you're going to be getting. Obviously, we're going to be going the shield spec. Coming down here, let's talk about what's really good and what's super crucial. Let's say you don't have all the points yet. Conquest Pursuit is the most important thing for this build early on, because this is going to give, whenever Zeal Crusade is active, your Vanguard Strike is going to evolve to Vanguard Hunt. What Vanguard Hunt does is it evolves Vanguard Strike into Vanguard Hunt, which essentially does the same thing. It will consume the Holy Sigil and it'll still give you those 2 stacks of Light Force Barrier, but the difference is you're going to get more attack because you do double attack. And then when Vanguard Hunts deal damage, you'll get 2% of your max HP, and it will grant you Indomitable Courage. Now this is super important, probably one of the most important buffs on your entire tree. What Indomitable Courage does is it just gives you more haste, percent haste, which is really big. A flat percent increase on our haste. So I'm going to show you exactly how this works. I have the volume off, so we're not going to hear stuff or just have music in the background. But what you're essentially going to do is you're going to activate, let's say that's just a taunt. You're going to get that taunt going, and then you're going to get 8 stacks specifically on Zeal Crusade, because that's how you make sure that you have the maximum duration. So this is going to activate Zeal's Crusade. And now this is going to evolve this attack. Now what we're building here is Vanguard Hunt. No, Indomitable Courage. Now I'll show you when we get to max stacks, because you can stack up to 10 times. Now let's go over to what it does, and as you can see here, we have 44.5% haste. And as you can see here, that's a pretty reasonable amount of haste, because that's going to contribute to our sigils cooling down much faster when we have that buff active. And that's kind of the importance of it. Super big to have that, and you really need it. And obviously this is going to contribute to giving us AoE cleave damage, and that damage is actually pretty noticeable when you're dealing you're dealing stuff in dungeons, or when you're solo farming, whatever. And it's going to give you some healing, restoration, and of course, seeing that we're always hitting with this, I'll show you, we're getting Light Force Barrier, as you can see there. So it's giving us Light Force Barrier, and it makes it easier for the healer not to put a lot of pressure on healing, because it's gonna raise our HP. As you can see, I'm sitting at 43k HP, and we're healing ourselves constantly. We're constantly giving Light Force Barrier, and it like works really well with that. So that's how that works. The other thing that's super important on this build is also Zeal's Haste. For every 15 point of photon energy consumed, this is going to reduce the cooldown of Zeal's Crusade. So whenever we use this, as you can see here, we have 100. That's going to take 45. That means we're going to lose 3 seconds off of Zeal Crusade. And as you can see there, Zeal Crusade went off a cooldown for a second there because we used it. So that's kind of what I was saying a moment ago, where we used the rotation to essentially keep the effect constantly going. We're going to consume our Light Force Barrier to give us Zeal Crusade. Zeal Crusade is going to turn our Vanguard Strike to Vanguard Hunt. Vanguard Hunt is going to give us haste to make sure our sigils continue to come off cooldown. We're going to use Judgment to lower the cooldown of Zeal's Crusade. We're just going to rinse repeat that until we get it going. I'm going to do a rotation of it and kind of talk you through it just so you're aware. But let's cover a few more things that's super important for this build. The other thing that's super important for this build is going to be Wide Raid. This is going to increase the range of Zeal's Crusade by 100%, which is fine, but the most important thing is when Zeal Crusade is active, the effect of Indomitable Courage is going to be doubled, meaning we're going to get double the haste, meaning our cooldowns are going to be significantly more efficient. and we should be able to keep the rotation going almost permanently when you're doing it against single target enemies, which is really big. Early on, until you get there, the most important thing is beelining to Conquest Pursuit and grabbing Zill's Haste, and then maybe coming over here and grab some of this stuff here, because like this one, Holy Radiance is decent. Overflow Hill Wall is super good for Light Forge sustain whenever you're dealing with a lot of pressure, damage pressure. And then Sigil Pursuit is really good for more damage, so this is actually a really big one. So I'm gonna just show you guys a rotation, and that'll be probably pretty much it for this video, so you guys have a better idea of how the rotation goes. So you're gonna approach a fight by activating Sacred Blade. This is going to give us Light Barrier, and it's going to apply, I mean, it's going to apply marks, but most importantly, it's going to give us the ability to essentially taunt the enemy. So you're going to activate that. Generally for me, depending on how much damage pressure the boss puts, or if we get the proc, as you saw there for a second ago, our skills glow a bit because of one of our passives. You could double spear there when that happens and just instantly give yourself more Light Barrier, but for the most part you're just going to just attack, right? You're going to try to get to 8 for the most part, and that's when the rotation begins. So we have 9 right now. It's going to consume all of them but 1, and it's going to passively give us heal over time. As you can see there on the like sword bar, the photon bar, that's the duration of your Zell's Crusade, if you didn't know. So once that goes away, your Zell's Crusade is going to go away, and you basically have that time to spam as much of your judgment that you can to maintain getting that cooldown as low as possible. You're not always gonna get it off cooldown instantly, but you will get like less than like typically 5 to 10 seconds typically. So just keep that in mind. So activate that, get the buff, get our Light Force to 8. I'm gonna hit it one time. Get our Zell's Crusade active, and then we're just going to spam. You got to keep your eye on the bar, and just keep, the moment you see 45, just use it, because it's going to keep you alive. It's going to keep this active. And as you can see there, we're just keeping our cooldown. You can weave in a taunt here and there to help out. And then as you can see there, our Zell's Crusade is off cooldown once again. Rinse, repeat it, and that's just pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward build. We do a lot of good AoE damage. We have a lot of sustain. We're able to taunt. It's just a really solid all-around build, and I'm a big fan of this. And there you have it, guys. That is my Shield Knight build. Hopefully this gives you a better idea of how to play the class, how to effectively like take advantage of all your different skills, and this should give you a bit of insight on how to play effectively without dying. I know a lot of players had problems dying with the Shield Knight, and generally you shouldn't have too much problem if you play it like this. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns when it comes to you know, the build or how to play it, feel free to leave the comments down below. I will be answering all the questions that I can. If you haven't already, make sure you drop a like, or more importantly, subscribe to the channel. We're still trying to reach that goal of 10k subs, so I would really appreciate it if you help out by subscribing. Plus, we have a ton of really cool Blue Protocol and anime games coming in the near future, so you definitely don't want to miss out on that. Huge shout out to Star Resonance for sponsoring this video, and just like that, guys, I'll see you in the next one very soon.